Mohamad Elmasry is Professor of Media Studies at the Doha Institute for Graduate Studies. Thank you for being with us this morning, Mohamad. By providing those weapons that our defence editor outlined for us, by providing those weapons to a country that's being investigated for genocide, that many UN Special Rapporteurs say is committing genocide in Gaza, is the US complicit in what is known as the crime of all crimes?
I don't think there's any question. I think we have to point out at the start that the U.S. has known for many months that Israel is carrying out genocide. It isn't just the UN or special rapporteurs that have said this. There is a consensus among scholars of genocide and Holocaust studies and international humanitarian law that this constitutes a textbook case of genocide. And we've known all of this since last October, since the very beginning of the war, right? And so by providing the arms, to your point, but also by giving Israel diplomatic cover. The U.S. vetoed 3 separate ceasefire resolutions at the UN Security Council in October of 2023, and then in December of 2023, and then in February of 2024. And let's not forget the important role that the U.S. has played in terms of just propaganda and drumming up support for Israel. The U.S. administration repeated all of the absurd myths about October 7th that Israel was talking about, that there were beheaded babies and that the Palestinian fighters were baking Israeli babies in ovens and cutting off breasts of women. The U.S. administration repeated all of that and continues to repeat those myths, right? So there's no question in my mind that the U.S. is complicit.
And so why go along with all of this when it goes not just against international laws, which the U.S. doesn't always have as much regard for if you look at its actions, but also goes against US laws, against arms transfers to parties that are using them in contravention of international humanitarian law?
Yeah, it's really interesting to look at this. They asked Professor Noam Chomsky a few months before he fell ill, just before October 7th, 2023, about the US-Israel relationship. And he said there was a shift taking place. He said historically it was the U.S. that was able to exercise a lot of leverage over Israel, but that things were shifting such that Israel was now exerting control over the U.S. and over U.S. policy positions. And we've seen that at every turn since October the 7th. If you look at the issue of Rafah, for instance, which I think is very illustrative of the U.S. position, there was a leaked U.S. government cable that said that the invasion of Rafah would be, quote, catastrophic. Right after that leak came to light, Joe Biden went on television in the U.S. and said that Rafah was a red line. But what ended up happening is that it was Israel that was able to back the United States into a corner and force its hand. And finally, the U.S. had to sort of surrender, and they said, well, we think that this invasion requires serious planning.
But why is it Israel that's forcing the U.S. into a corner when it's the U.S. that gives Israel the billions of dollars of military or financial aid?
Because individual U.S. politicians, and this administration in particular, cannot be seen as abandoning Israel. It would be too politically costly. It would be catastrophic for their political lives. That's because the Israel lobby inside the U.S. exerts inordinate control over American politics. I would encourage people to read the book, The Israel Lobby by John Mearsheimer and Stephen Walt, which was published in 2007, but is more relevant today than it was then. And the argument is very simple. It's that basically the Israel lobby has control over U.S. politics, and that's the simple answer.
Mohamad Elmasry, thank you very much for your analysis. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks.